Cubs didn't make the playoffs, and owner Tom Ricketts talked about that after the final game of the season. We talk about that as well. Let's not call a year that the Cubs didn't make the postseason a good year. Yeah, we're going to talk about that and more. He's Chad Anderson. I'm Mick Gillispie. If you're not on our roster yet, we're looking for you to join right now and get us back to the playoffs. Be part of the Cubs baseball channel. Like, subscribe. Make sure that you hit the bell so you know when we're live and then when we drop content. Thank you guys for being here. Well, Chad, Tom Ricketts, the owner of the Cubs, spoke. The chairman runs the team. First off, we know a couple of things from the conversation. It's not like he gets out in the media a lot. I've interviewed him probably as much as anybody has. And that's really telling you that he doesn't really do a lot of media, but he does once in a while. And this one was, hey, let's not say that we're successful when we don't make the playoffs. And I thought that that was definitely the right tone. I think the team should feel like they underachieved, and I think that the players should be pissed.
Yeah, I kind of went into this season, though, not expecting this to be the case where the Cubs were battling going into the final week, but that's just me personally. I didn't really think this team was set up to make the playoffs, but I did say at the trade deadline, one thing that kind of bothered me is the Cubs, even though they got hot and they started to kind of work their way up in the standings, and it was like, oh, okay, well, actually, maybe we should be a little bit of a buyer instead of a seller here. What Tom Ricketts should echo and resonate with a lot of fans is that, yeah, things didn't end up the way that Cubs fans wanted, didn't make the playoffs. But at the same time, the reason I thought they should have been sellers is if you're a Cubs fan, Mick, if you're a big market like Chicago, okay, Chicago is a huge market. And the Cubs are a very, very popular team. It's evident by how many fans are constantly going to see them when they're on the road and how well they do in spring training with attendance numbers and merchandise and all these things. Like, if you're the Cubs, making the playoffs shouldn't be good enough. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
It shouldn't be the, oh yeah, we're just hoping we can slide in, maybe we chase down Milwaukee, but let's get that 5 or 6 seed. And if you want to say, well, the Cubs, maybe they're ahead of schedule with the team that they have put together right now because of all the young guys you and I talked about that are coming up in the system. But to me, I just look at it and I'm like, even if they make it as a 6 seed, great, it's cool, it's fun, but it's that much bigger and better to a market like the Royals or the Marlins or, I know Tampa Bay's obviously had their run, but
Baltimore.
Right. Yeah. Baltimore kind of, finally, what was it? They had 100 losses just 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, right.
And now they've got 100 wins and they're winning the East. So to me, I really understand and I do respect what he's saying is that, hey, I understand that fans may be more impressed. I was with the fact that they were even in it. But that shouldn't be a positive because we didn't make the playoffs. I still just go back to the deadline and say, the Cubs aren't here to make the playoffs. Like the Cubs are here to win the frickin' World Series. They're here to be NLCS contenders. They're here to be the status of the Braves and the Dodgers, not, oh, we limped in the back door to a wild card position that didn't exist 4 years ago.
Right.
But now because baseball's expanded, we just happened to get into the postseason.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. And my whole thing was, and people that watch this know, I wanted them to sell because it was a seller's market. And I never thought that they could win a World Series. But, at the same time, I did appreciate the fact that the players went out there, made the push, won the games, and forced the Cubs to make some trades that are going to turn out to be bad trades. But at least you have the excitement of going into a race, and maybe you learn something from it. But you're right. The bottom line is winning a World Series, not making the playoffs as the third wild card team. And then the season's over after you play 163. No, it's getting there and winning it all. And this team never had that chance. They were never good enough.
Do you remember in 2016, the Cubs, I know you do, it's more rhetorical, but the Cubs traded Torres to the Yankees for Aroldis Chapman.
4 other guys with him, right?
Well, yeah, but that was kind of the centerpiece. He was the big name that went to the Yankees, and Chapman comes to the Cubs, and it ends up being a World Series team. And a year, 2 years, 3 years later, as Glaber is progressing in his major league career, people look back and they're like, "Oh, you regret that trade." It's like, no, that's what guys like Torres are for.
Right.
Is they're the piece that gets you the piece so that you can win the World Series today.
Yeah.
And the only other problem I had with not selling at the deadline, it's not like you had Belly locked up for 3 to 5 years.
And he's not coming back probably, right?
He's probably not. Yeah, you're probably not going to sign him. Maybe we're
Which
wrong.
Tom kind of, and not just hold it right there, Chad, because you're making great points. Tom also was like, hey, that's up to the baseball ops guys, and the Cubs have this history of making reasonable decisions when it comes to free agents. You don't want to have the Padres, where you have a bunch of guys that you paid way too much for. You have no farm system and you don't make the playoffs. If Bellinger is wanting 11 years, like some of the other Boris clients, you can't do that. Tom kind of mentioned that, hey, some of these contracts, the players aren't that good at the end of the contract. And, you're trying to win. He's going to own the team for 11 years. It's not like you're going to pass that on to someone else. All right, pick it back up there.
Well, you bring up a good point. Like, what are you really getting for Belly? Like, if you sign, I'm just throwing random numbers, but if you threw out there like 10 years and 200 million or something, right? I don't even know what he's going to get, but let's just say it's something, whatever, long-term deal, 10 years, 250 million. What did Trey Turner get? 300 and something million.
That's crazy.
Philadelphia. Yeah. They're going to suck in years 8, 9, and 10. So are you not really paying them like 60 million? For a year for the first 4 years and then kind of 30 million. I mean, it's just crazy how much you're paying for these guys. But my point, still going back to Belly, was just you weren't going to keep Belly. So then you have a decision to make and you go, wait, all right, Belly's probably not going to be here next year. Are we a World Series team this year? The answer is no. It's not maybe. It's no, you're not a World Series team. So as soon as you're not a World Series team, if you're Chicago, not if you're Miami, but if you're Chicago, you trade Bellinger. You get every piece that you can get to set up the next deal, because here you are at the end of the season. It's over. You missed the playoffs. You weren't sellers. You're not getting Bellinger. And I'm annoyed about all that. But I'll tell you what, it's easy for you and I to sit here and do this and talk about it and be critics. But there is no one, I guarantee you, who felt worse in the past 7-8 days than Tom Ricketts and Jed Hoyer and what they had to endure. They're just looking at it and second guessing themselves, and they're miserable, more miserable than you and I could be as to what transpired.
The other thing that he said was he thought David Ross had a good year, and it sounded like he was very supportive of David Ross. It's out on the street, right? He was talking about how hard the players played, and that when the Cubs were under 500, how he brought the Cubs back. And some of the players have also stepped up and said that they love playing for him. Kyle Hendricks, who I love, you love, like the professor. I can't argue with the fact that the team played hard. Like they did. They played hard the whole season. The issue that I think fans have with him is not making it comfortable for young players when they came, or even not even playing them. The way that he used the bullpen, and some of that's his fault, some of it's not. But at the end of the day, when the owner of the team comes out and says that, you're not going anywhere. So he's coming back. Bellinger likes playing for him. Maybe that helps you. And there were some positives this season as well. They ended up doing better than last year. You and me are kind of in the same boat. I never looked at this roster and thought that they were a contender for a World Series championship, but they played better than I thought. The problem is that they should have made the playoffs, and it's like, well, what I thought at the beginning of the year really doesn't matter. It's that the team was better. They had the great middle infield without the shift. Justin Steele was a Cy Young contender for most of the season. Bellinger is going to win comeback player of the year. He's going to win like $1 million bonus. He's going to end up getting a huge contract out of this, whether it's with the Cubs or someone else. Hopefully it's with the Cubs, because we all loved watching him. And the team, they just wilted down the stretch. But part of managing is figuring out a way to be ready to win down the stretch. And that didn't happen. But Rossi's coming back.
He is. What's so surprising to me, and you and I, we bitched about it the other night on this channel, is that Rossi played on a World Series team that was full of young guys with a couple of vets sprinkled in. Was he not? I mean, it was he and Lester, and then Hayward, because he had the rain delay speech, which obviously jolted everyone,
right?
And Zobrist, right? And Fowler. But you still had Riz, who not necessarily young, but second time in that setting or that experience. Bryant, only second year in. Baez, 2.5 years in. Schwarber, a year in. Plus he was playing on a torn ACL. So I was just surprised when you step back and look at how often the young guys played and how some people were selected over others in lineup situations or, pinch hitting or pinch running or defense and whatnot, bullpen. And I was just surprised because he played on that team that used so many young guys, but it seems like he does seem to favor veterans. But he'll be back. I'm actually fine with it. There are things I disagree with, but I'm not just carrying the torches to the castle. But I think next year, though, it's going to be hey, man, all right, this is year 5. So we better see something now. You've got the young pieces. You got the opportunities.
Yeah, shit or get off the pot season, right?
Yeah. You got to contend for the division, not make a run and hope to catch Milwaukee. You got to contend next year.
Yeah, right. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think he's on a short lease next year to be successful. But you know what? It's Tom Ricketts' team, and he's the guy that makes the decisions at the end of the day. And there's definitely, you do feel that they're moving in the right direction. But it's just a shame that they should have made it this year. And I go back to the very basic comment that we started this show on, is that you shouldn't accept a season where you don't make the playoffs. It's not a good season. This is a failure because this team, no matter what you and I thought at the beginning of the year, was better than we thought. And yet they didn't take the pieces that they had and use them well enough to win a couple more games. And they lost out to the Marlins and they lost out to the Diamondbacks, which are very small markets. And the Cubs are a huge market, and they have a lot more resources, and they didn't use them. Plus, they have better farm systems than both of those teams, and you could see it coming at the end of the year. There was just no sense of like getting guys rested and ready for that final push. They ran out of gas, and for that, it sucks because you know what, they didn't make it, and you wonder what things could have been like. But at the end of the day, he didn't manage in 2015 and 16. Joe Madden did, and Joe Madden was really good at taking young players, bringing them in, making them feel comfortable, and getting contributions out of them, something that he learned when he was in Tampa. Maybe he learned it when he was with the Angels before that, and that's something that David Ross probably needs to call him and talk to him about because...
actually, we say this. You know how there's all these consultants in the world today?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Boy, I tell you, I would, and I don't know that he'd be up for, I'm completely spitballing here, but Joe Madden's been mistreated a couple of times, in my opinion. He would be an amazing, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, right. Like managing consultant. Yeah, right. Why not?
Consultant for David Ross for the entire season. Actually, in the office.
Bench coach. Normally you call him bench coach.
Yeah, but I don't see Joe actually putting the uniform on and acting as a bench coach behind Ross. But I think, kind of like Theo did with Major League Baseball, or kind of like Joe Torre has done with Major League. I kind of see that progression maybe with Joe. Again, there's no rumor or fact here at all. It's just more.
You're just saying that would be cool.
To connect the dots. It would be really cool because I think that would help Ross a lot with the young guys.
Guys, make sure that you are a subscriber to the channel. Hit the bell so you know when we're dropping content. We're going to be doing a show that airs every morning. We're going to do that every day. So you guys will have that, and we'll talk Cubs baseball. Chad, thanks for coming on, man. Let's do it again tomorrow.
Always, man. See you tomorrow.
All right. See you guys tomorrow. Make sure that you're part of what we're doing here. And we'll keep on following everything going on with the Cubs.